I ruined her blouse on a Tuesday. Mambian, not the kind of detail you'd think would matter in the grand scheme of things, but it does because that coffee stain, dark as espresso, spreading across crisp white linen, became the thread that unraveled everything I thought I knew about wanting someone. Emerald it was. Chi Sister San AM. I know because I'd checked my phone exactly 12 times since leaving my apartment, convinced I was going to be late for the pitch meeting. The kind of meeting that could make or break a junior copywriter's career at a place like Morrison and Vale. The elevator doors were closing when I lunged forward, my oversized Americano leading the charge like a battering ram made of cardboard and hope. The doors bounced open, coffee sloshed, physics did its thing, and there she was. Oh God. The apology died in my throat because I'd looked up and she was looking down at her blouse, and I was suddenly aware of three things simultaneously: the spreading stain, the curve of her collarbone, and the fact that my brain had just short-circuited somewhere between professionalism and something I didn't have a name for yet. Vance, it's fine, she said, but her voice had this quality to it. Low, amused, maybe a little tired, like she'd dealt with worse and probably before breakfast. It's not fine. It's really not fine. That's silk, isn't it? Or linen? Something expensive that I definitely can't afford to replace on a junior copywriter's salary, but will absolutely try to, breathe, she interrupted. And I did, mostly because she was smiling now, and it transformed her entire face. Laugh lines deepened at the corners of her eyes, genuine lines, the kind earned through actual laughter, not the kind you apologize for. I have a blazer in my office, and you have a meeting in… She glanced at her watch, something classic and minimalist. 14 minutes. How did you, the Morrison pitch, I'm leading it, Catherine Reeves, executive creative director. She extended her hand, seemingly unbothered by the coffee dripping from her sleeve. And you're Daniel Torres, the copywriter everyone's been talking about. Benj's her handshake was firm, warm, and lasted exactly 2 seconds longer than professional courtesy required. Or maybe I imagined that. I was imagining a lot of things in those 14 minutes, like how her hair was twisted into this loose thing at the nape of her neck, a few silver-streaked strands escaping, and how she smelled like something clean and complex, jasmine maybe, or bergamot. Definitely not the generic floral that dominated our office. Bendian, I'm so sorry, I said again, because apparently that's all my brain could produce. You said that already. The elevator climbed. Numbers lit up in sequence. Now tell me something I don't know. You have 13 minutes to impress me before we walk into that conference room. Why should Morrison choose our campaign? Just like that, we were working. She fired questions. I answered. The coffee stain became irrelevant or maybe invisible, and I found myself leaning against the elevator wall, gesturing with my empty cup, watching the way she tilted her head when I made a point she hadn't considered. Her eyes were this impossible shade of green-gray, and they stayed fixed on mine with an intensity that made me forget we were in a moving box. We were Wabert's box. Forget the stain, forget that I'd been terrified 60 seconds ago. Then the elevator chimed, 32nd floor. Good, she said simply, stepping out. Don't lose that energy. And Daniel? Yeah? Next time you assault someone with coffee, make it at least a cappuccino. Americanos are pedestrian. Belinda. She walked away before I could respond, before I could process the fact that she'd said next time like there would be one. Like this was the beginning of something rather than an embarrassing anecdote I'd tell at happy hour. The pitch went well, better than well. Morrison signed that afternoon. You're right, but I barely remembered any of it because I spent 3 hours watching Catherine command that room like she'd been born to it, gesturing with elegant hands, pivoting strategies when the client pushed back. Never once looking at the notes. I knew she'd spent all night preparing because I'd seen the timestamp on her email, Oral Porter's IMM. Sun, Scissor Chi AM. Jane after, when everyone else had filtered out to celebrate, I found her in her office. The blazer was off. She'd rolled up her sleeves, and I could see the faint coffee stain on the cuff where she'd missed a spot. She was staring at her computer screen, and the blue light made her look tired in a way she hadn't allowed herself to look during the meeting. "And hey," I said from the doorway. She glanced up. "Daniel, hell of a pitch. Hell of a save, you mean?" When Morrison pushed back on the demographic targeting, I froze. "You stepped in, you would have found your footing." She leaned back in her chair, and something in her posture shifted. Less armor, more honesty. "But yes, I stepped in. That's the job, is it? I moved into the office without permission, drawn by something I couldn't name. Or is it just who you are? Is it just who you are?" The question hung between us. Outside her window, the city was turning golden, that particular late afternoon light that makes everything look possible. She studied me for a long moment, and I had the distinct feeling she was deciding something. "Why are you here, Daniel?" "You're dry cleaning," I said, pulling out my phone. "I want to pay for it, or replace the blouse, or I don't need you to do that. I know you don't need me to. I need me to. There's a difference." Another smile, smaller this time, almost private. "There is, isn't there?" Munda. She gave me her number, told me to text her the receipt. But when I left her office, my hands were shaking, and it had nothing to do with caffeine. I didn't text her about the dry cleaning. Tamdia I texted her 3 days later at Sir E. Sisterch TPM when I was still at the office, staring at a tagline that refused to come together. Quick question about the Morrison brand voice, too late to bother you? Her response came in 43 seconds. I counted. Catherine, depends. How quick is the question? E? Could be a 5-minute conversation. Could be an hour. Honestly, I'm stuck. Catherine, conference room, San. Give me 10 minutes. Bands. She showed up in jeans and a sweater that looked soft enough to be cashmere, her hair down for the first time since I'd met her. It fell just past her shoulders, and I tried not to stare at the way it caught the fluorescent light. "Band, you stayed late on a Friday," I said. "So did you. I'm 29 and trying to prove myself." "What's your excuse?" Bane, she set down her laptop, and I caught a glimpse of her screen. Not work, but what looked like architecture plans. Maybe I don't need an excuse. Maybe I just like what I do at Sir E's Sister GPM. Especially at Sir E's Sister GPM, when it's quiet, when everyone else has gone home to their families or their weekend plans, and it's just me and the work. She met my eyes. And occasionally, apparently, junior copywriters with tagline emergencies. We worked for 3 hours. Dumbbeat somewhere around E-Sensor AM, we stopped pretending it was just about the tagline. We started talking about why we'd gotten into advertising. Her at 24, fresh out of a failed marriage, and desperate to prove she was more than someone's ex-wife. Me at 23, running from a finance degree my father insisted on and towards something that felt like making art, even if it was commercial art. "Do you miss it?" I asked, being 24 and desperate. Sometimes. She was sitting on the conference table now, shoes off, feet tucked under her. Everything felt urgent then. Like if I didn't succeed immediately, I'd disappear. Now I know that's not how it works. Success is slow. It's incremental. It's showing up at 10 a.m. to finish a pitch deck because you, the only one who cares enough to get it right. Right? Is that depressing, knowing it's slow? No, she said softly. It's honest. And honesty is underrated. The city stretched out below us, mostly dark except for the occasional lit window. Other people working late, or maybe just awake, staring at their own screens or ceilings or uncertainties. "Bands, can I tell you something?" The words were out before I could stop them. "You can tell me anything. Flayan, when I spilled coffee on you, I didn't just see someone important I needed to impress. I stopped because how do you finish that sentence without sounding insane? Without admitting that you felt something shift in an elevator, something fundamental and terrifying? You saw what?" Her voice was careful now, guarded, someone I wanted to know, not the executive creative director version. The real version. The one who shows up at midnight in jeans and works on architecture plans that have nothing to do with advertising. The silence stretched. I'd miscalculated. overstepped, confused professional mentorship with something it absolutely was not. And now you know, those plans are for a house, she said finally, in Vermont. I bought property there 2 years ago, and I've been designing something for when I finally have the courage to leave all this behind. Chinst, you want to leave? I want options. I want to know I'm here because I choose to be, not because I'm afraid of what happens if I stop. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something vulnerable in her expression. Does that make sense? I know, perfect sense. I'm 48 years old, Daniel. AMD, and the statement landed between us like a physical thing. Not a question, not quite a warning, just a fact, offered plainly. Okay, I said, okay. You're 48, I'm 29. You've been doing this for longer than I've been out of college. You're brilliant at your job, you're designing a house in Vermont, and you stayed late on a Friday to help me with a tagline that probably could have waited until Monday. It could have, she admitted. Why didn't you let it? Shio, another long silence. Then, because I wanted to see you, the confession hung in the air between us, honest and terrifying in equal measure. I watched her face, waiting for her to take it back, to laugh it off, to rebuild whatever wall she'd just let down. A mom bureau, she didn't, Catherine. You should go home, she said, but she didn't move. It's late, and we both have lives we should probably get back to. Do we? Don't you? She tilted her head, studying me. Some girlfriend waiting up? Weekend plans with friends who actually leave the office before midnight? No girlfriend, no plans. Just me in an apartment that's too small and too expensive and decorated, like someone who hasn't quite figured out how to be an adult yet. Biange, she laughed. A real laugh, the kind that made those lines deepen around her eyes. I have 17 years on you, and I'm still not sure I've figured that out. The bonds? Then maybe we can be confused together, Daniel? My name in her mouth sounded different, softer, weighted with something I couldn't identify. This isn't, I can't what? I can't be what you think I am. Some fantasy of an older woman who has everything figured out. I'm divorced. I have a daughter in college who barely speaks to me because I chose work over being present. I have gray hair I'm too stubborn to dye, and a body that's 48 years old, and I've never wanted anyone more. The words came out raw, unfiltered, and I watched her face change, surprise, then something else, something that looked almost like fear. You don't mean that, I do. I stood, moved closer, but didn't touch her, didn't dare. I've spent 3 days trying to convince myself this was just admiration, professional respect, but I can't stop thinking about you, about the way you command a room. Yeah, but also the way you rolled your eyes when Morrison asked about TikTok trends, the way you stayed late to help me even though you didn't have to, the way you're looking at me right now like you're terrified I might mean what I'm saying. I am terrified, she whispered. Why? Because I'm looking at you the same way. We didn't kiss that night. Bean, we should have, God knows the tension was there, thick enough to drown in. But Catherine stood up, smoothed her sweater, and said she needed to go. And I let her because pushing felt wrong, because consent is more than just a yes. It's timing and readiness and 1,000 unspoken things. But everything changed anyway. Monday morning she was different. Not cold, exactly, but careful. Professional. When we passed in the hallway, she smiled. That same polite smile she gave everyone, and asked about my weekend like, we hadn't spent 3 hours at, RAM admitting things we couldn't take back. I told myself to let it go. She'd reconsidered, realized it was a mistake. 29 and 48 might sound romantic in theory, but in practice? In the harsh light of a Monday morning, in an office where she was my superior and I was barely established? Maybe she'd decided it wasn't worth the complication. But then Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Catherine, can you come to my place tonight? I need to talk to you. Really talk. She sent her address. An apartment in the West Village, 4th floor walk-up. Eat. I showed up at 7 with a bottle of wine I'd agonized over for 20 minutes at the store, Not too expensive, presumptuous. Not too cheap, thoughtless. Not red stains, not white, too casual. I settled on rosé and hoped for the best. Man, she answered the door in bare feet and an oversized linen shirt, hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked younger somehow, or maybe just more herself. Her apartment was exactly what I'd imagined and nothing like it. Exposed brick, built-in bookshelves crammed with everything from advertising theory to poetry, plants everywhere, an entire wall dedicated to photographs. Most were of a girl at various ages. Dark hair, Catherine's eyes, my daughter, Zoe, she said, following my gaze. She's at Columbia, preemed. We text every few days and see each other once a month, and it's cordial and distant and nothing like what I imagined motherhood would be. What did you imagine? Closeness, understanding, the kind of relationship where she'd call me first with good news? Catherine moved to the kitchen, opened the wine, even though I hadn't offered it yet. Instead, she calls her father, tells him about her classes, her friends, the guys she's seeing, and I get the edited version later, the highlights reel. That must hurt. It does. She poured 2 glasses, handed me one. I told myself the sacrifice was worth it. That building a career meant providing for her. Private school, college tuition, opportunities I never had. But she didn't want opportunities. She wanted a mother who showed up to dance recitals and helped with homework and wasn't perpetually exhausted from choosing work over everything else. We sat on her couch, worn leather, probably older than me, comfortable in the way only used things can be. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you need to know who I am, not the version you've built in your head. The real version, the one who failed at marriage because I couldn't figure out how to be a wife and a professional. The one whose daughter learned to make breakfast alone because I was already at the office. The one who's 48 and single and terrified of repeating the same mistakes, Catherine. I'm not done. She set down her glass, and her hands were shaking. You said you've never wanted anyone more. And Daniel, the way you looked at me, God, it's been so long since anyone looked at me like that. Like I was something precious instead of just competent. But I can't be someone's fantasy. I can't be the older woman who teaches you about life, or sex, or whatever it is you think this might be. Plein Jew, that's not what I think. Then what do you think? Lambien, the question was a challenge, and I took a long breath before answering. Wait, I think you're brilliant and difficult and maybe a little bit scared. Of letting anyone see the parts of you that aren't perfect. I think you've built this armor out of professional success because it's safer than being vulnerable. I think you're designing a house in Vermont because you're planning an escape route from a life that satisfies you professionally but leaves you lonely. Her expression flickered, surprise, defensiveness, then reluctant recognition. I think, I continued, that you stayed late that Friday not just to help me with a tagline, but because you wanted an excuse to not go home to an empty apartment. And I think you're telling me about your failures as a mother and a wife. Because you're trying to scare me off before this becomes something real. Dombence, maybe I am. Why? Because you're 29, her voice cracked. Because I remember being 29. And I remember wanting things with a clarity that felt like certainty. And then life happened. I got divorced. I missed 1,000 small moments with my daughter. I woke up one day and realized I'd built a career but lost a family. And I won't be the reason you make the same mistakes. What if I'm not making a mistake? Banjeel Daniel, what if this is the most honest thing I've felt since moving to this city? What if every date I've been on in the last 5 years has felt hollow because I was performing some version of myself I thought I should be, and with you, I don't have to perform? Gat, she stood abruptly, moved to the window. Outside, the West Village was doing its evening thing. People walking dogs, couples holding hands. The ordinary magic of a Tuesday night. And you don't know what you're asking for, she said to the glass. Then tell me. Come on, I'm set in my ways. I like my mornings quiet. I work late. I'm not interested in children. I had one, and I wasn't particularly good at it. I'm planning to leave New York in 5 years, maybe less. I have aging parents who'll need care soon. I have gray hair, you're too stubborn to die, I interrupted, moving to stand beside her. A body that's 48 years old. A daughter you love even though you don't know how to reach her. Architecture plans for a house that represents freedom you listen too well. Is that a flaw? Bayons, she turned to face me, and we were close enough now that I could see the fine lines around her mouth, the freckles across her nose, the silver threaded through her hair at the temples. Every mark of time, every evidence of life lived, I'm afraid, she whispered. Of what? Kulse, that you'll wake up in a year or two and realize you wanted the idea of me more than the reality. That I'll get older and you'll wonder what you gave up. That people will look at us and see something wrong instead of something real. And I'm afraid, I said, that if we don't try this, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what if. That I'll date people my own age who don't challenge me, who don't make me want to be better, who don't look at me like I'm capable of more than I believe. Daniel, she said, I'm 48, you're only 29, and I replied, and I've never wanted anyone more. Toddle, the words hung between us, trembling with honesty. Then she kissed me, not tentatively. Catherine didn't do anything tentatively. She kissed me like she was deciding something, like she was choosing courage over fear, like she was tired of running from the possibility of connection. Her hands found my face, and mine found her waist, and for a moment the age gap didn't matter. The complications didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the fact that we were both here, both terrified, both willing to try. Then, when we pulled apart, she was crying. Hey, I said softly, thumbs brushing tears from her cheeks. I'm 48 years old, and I'm crying over a kiss like I'm 16. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. She laughed through the tears. I don't know what any of this is, but I know I don't want you to leave. Then I won't. I didn't leave. We spent that night talking, really talking, the kind of conversation that moves from surface to depth without pretense. She told me about her marriage, how it had crumbled slowly rather than explosively, two people drifting apart because neither knew how to bridge the distance. How her ex-husband had remarried, had a son, seemed to have figured out fatherhood the second time, in a way he never managed with Zoe. Does it bother you? I asked. That he got it right with someone else? It used to. Now I think we were just wrong for each other. Right people, wrong timing, wrong compatibility. She was leaning against me on the couch, and I could feel her breathing, steady and warm. He needed someone who wanted the domestic life. I needed someone who understood ambition. Neither of us was wrong. We just weren't right together. What do you need now? Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. She tilted her head to look at me. But maybe I need someone who isn't afraid of the fact that I'm still figuring it out. Someone who doesn't expect me to have all the answers. I don't expect that. You should, though. I'm 19 years older. I should be wiser, more settled. You are wise. And settled doesn't mean finished growing. My grandmother got her MFA at 73. Settled is just another word for dead. She laughed, and I felt it reverberate through her body into mine. Your grandmother sounds remarkable. She was. She also told me that age is just the number of times you've orbited the sun, and it doesn't mean anything except that you've had more time to collect experiences. Smart woman. She would have liked you. Something shifted in Catherine's expression, a softening, a letting go. Daniel, if we do this, and I mean really do this, not just tonight, but tomorrow and next week and beyond, it's going to be complicated. I know. People at work will talk. They'll assume I'm having some midlife crisis or you're trying to sleep your way up the ladder. Let them talk. HR will have concerns. We'll need to disclose the relationship. Probably work on separate teams. Worth it. My daughter might not understand. She already thinks I'm selfish. This will probably confirm it in her mind. Or, I said carefully, it might show her that you're human, that you're allowed to want things for yourself, that choosing your own happiness doesn't make you a bad mother. Catherine went quiet, considering. Then, you're very wise for 29. I've orbited the sun enough times to know what matters. And what matters? This. You. The way I feel when I'm with you, like I can be completely honest without performing. Like I'm enough exactly as I am. She kissed me again, slower this time. And when she pulled back, she was smiling. Okay, okay, okay. Let's try this. Let's be complicated together. Let's figure it out as we go. Yeah? Yeah. She settled back against me. Of course you do. We take it slow. No rushing into cohabitation or meeting each other's families until we're sure. We're honest about what we need. I promise to tell you when I need space. You promise to tell me when you need more connection. And we check in regularly. Make sure this is still what we both want. I can do that. And Daniel? Yeah? If you ever feel like you're missing out on dating people your own age, on experiences you should be having, same goes for you. If you feel like I'm holding you back from Vermont or whatever comes next, then I tell you. She laced her fingers through mine. We're honest. Always. Always. We stayed like that until the early morning, talking and kissing and building something fragile and necessary between us. When I finally left because we both had work and some boundaries needed to be maintained, she walked me to the door. See you at the office? I said. Professional distance until we figure out the HR situation, she confirmed. But tonight, if you wanted to come back, I want to come back. Good. She kissed me once more, brief and sweet. Bring food. I never have groceries. 48 years old and still eating takeout like a college student? Some things never change. She was grinning now, that private smile I was beginning to recognize as just mine. Now go. Before I decide professionalism is overrated. The next few weeks were a study in contradiction. At work, we were colleagues, respectful, professional, careful not to give anything away. But after hours, we built something else entirely. Dinners at her place or mine. Long walks through the city, talking about everything and nothing. Quiet evenings where we worked side by side, her on architecture plans, me on whatever copy I'd brought home. We met Zoe 3 weeks in. Catherine was terrified. I could see it in the way she checked her reflection 5 times before we left for lunch, in the way her hands trembled slightly as we walked to the restaurant. She's going to hate this, Catherine said. She's going to see that you're happy. What if that's not enough? Then we deal with it together. Zoe was 21, studying and skeptical in the way only a pre-med student can be. She shook my hand with a firm grip and assessed me with eyes identical to her mother's. So you're the guy? She said. I'm Daniel. Same thing. She sat down, immediately opened the menu. Mom says you're a copywriter. Do you like it? Sen? We talked advertising. Then, medicine. Then her research on neuroplasticity, which led to a spirited debate about nature versus nurture that had Catherine watching both of us like we were speaking a language she didn't quite understand. You're good at this, Zoe said to me when Catherine excused herself to the restroom. At lunch? At talking to her like she's a person, instead of just my mom. She needs that. Zoe's expression softened. She's been alone for a long time. Married to work, you know? I've been angry about it. But I'm starting to realize that maybe she just didn't know how else to be. She loves you. More than you probably know. I know. I'm just not sure she knows how to show it in ways that matter to me. Zoe paused. But maybe you can help with that. Maybe you're good for her. I'm trying to be. That's all anyone can do, I guess. When Catherine returned, something had shifted. The lunch continued easier now, with Zoe asking about the house in Vermont, Catherine tentatively inviting her to help with design decisions. It wasn't a miracle. Zoe didn't suddenly transform into the daughter Catherine had always wanted, and Catherine didn't become the mother Zoe had needed. But it was a beginning. A small bridge built over years of distance. As we walked back afterward, Catherine's hand found mine. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not being intimidated by my complicated life. For sitting through that lunch and talking neuroplasticity with my daughter like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was natural. She's smart and interesting, and she's part of your life, which makes her part of mine. Catherine stopped walking. Right there on a busy Manhattan sidewalk, people streaming around us, she stopped and looked at me with something that might have been wonder. I'm falling in love with you, she said. The words should have been terrifying. Should have felt too soon, too much, too complicated. Instead, they felt inevitable. Good, I said, pulling her close, not caring who saw. Because I've been falling for weeks. We kissed there on the sidewalk, 48 and 29. Catherine Reeves and Daniel Torres, two people who'd found each other in an elevator over spilled coffee and decided that age was just the number of orbits around the sun, and what mattered was the way you made each other feel like coming home. That was 6 months ago. We're still figuring it out, how to balance work and relationship, how to navigate the quiet judgment of colleagues, how to build something that accounts for our different life stages. Catherine started taking weekends off, flying up to Vermont to work on the house. I go with her when I can, learning about floor plans and load-bearing walls and all the practical magic of building something with your hands. Zoe comes for dinner once a month now. We're not a traditional family. There's too much history and hurt for easy healing, but we're something. We're trying. Last week, Catherine and I disclosed our relationship to HR, filled out the forms, had the awkward meeting, agreed to work on separate accounts. It was administrative and uncomfortable and absolutely worth it. Because now I don't have to pretend I don't love her every time someone mentions her name. She's still the executive creative director who commands rooms and sends emails at 3 a.m. I'm still the junior copywriter finding his footing. But after hours, we're just Catherine and Daniel. Two people who orbit each other in ever-tightening circles, building something honest and complicated and real. Some people still don't get it. They see the age gap and make assumptions about her, about me, about what this relationship means. And yeah, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I catch her staring at me with this look that says she's wondering if I'll wake up one day and regret this choice. When that happens, I take her face in my hands and I remind her, "Whoa, you're 48. I'm 29. And I have never, not for a single moment, wanted anyone more." And she smiles, that private smile that's just for me, and she believes it because it's the truth. And truth, as Catherine taught me, is the only thing worth building a life on.